Hello and welcome back to Bicycle Legs and another friendly argument. And today I've got Todd Evans back with me. Todd, always a pleasure to have you on the channel. Thanks for coming.
Always good to be here. Thank you.
And today we are going to be looking at Pipes of Peace by Paul McCartney. And you got two of them. You got one in the background as well.
Yeah, that's the archive collection, and this is the U.S. copy. And I don't know what they look like in your country, but the U.S. copy has like a nostalgic like Columbia
Yes.
on the front, and then the picture on the back. The
Well,
uh, the archive collection has the picture with the chair on both sides on
yeah.
both labels.
Mine, the labels are very much the same, but they're Parlophone instead of Columbia.
Okay.
Um, and I'll show in the video, I'll show some pictures of the covers and the
Okay.
labels and all that sort of
Very
thing. But
cool.
yeah, this is Paul McCartney's album from 1983. It was released on the 31st of October 1983, coming in after in the wake of Tug of War, which was a commercial and critical success for him. This album did well as well. It got to number 4 in the UK, it got to number 15 in the US, and it got to number 9 here in Australia. And it went both platinum in both the US and the UK. So it was a good selling album. But we're going to talk about this album because I know, Todd, you really, really rate this album. You nearly put this in your top 10 of like Beatles and solo records when we did that show on Rock
Yes.
Daydream Nation. And I will put a link to that show in the description. If you haven't watched that show, go and check it out because it was a really fun show to do. Whereas I've done a top 10 Paul McCartney on my channel, and I'll leave a link to that in the description as well. This album did not make my top 10 just Paul McCartney albums. So obviously, we have quite different feelings about this album, so it should be interesting as we go through it to see where our differences lie. So obviously, it starts with the title track Pipes of Peace, which was the second single off the album, pretty much everywhere except North America. And it was released as a single on the 5th of December 1983. What are your thoughts on the title track?
I think that I really like the orchestration in it. I like one of the things I like about the whole album is that there are a lot of sound effects and little details, and Pipes of Peace has some of those little details in it. Produced by George Martin. I like the string arrangements. I mean, we'll talk more about that when we talk about the last song, which I think is really just exquisite as far as string arrangements go. But great vocal arrangements, and Pipes of Peace is definitely a good example of that. There's a lot of layers of background vocals that are quite loud in the mix, and that's one of the things that I like about it.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I've got to say, for me, it's one of the better songs on the album. Even though like, half of these songs were recorded for the album and half of them were outtakes from the Tug of War sessions. This sounds like it's an outtake from the Tug of War sessions, but it isn't. It's
Yeah,
definitely
I agree with that. Yeah.
it's definitely made to sound like that. And it does kind of, to me, I think the thing that brings this song back a little bit is that it does kind of sound like a remake of the title track of Tug of War. Even right down to that little orchestral sting at the end of Pipes of Peace. It sounds like the orchestral sting at the end of Tug of War, you know?
It does.
And the
It
lyrics
sort of
are
binds the albums together in a way.
Yeah, and the lyrics are a bit ebony and ivory to me.
Just a
Although
touch.
I will say this is a better lyric than Ebony and Ivory,
Yes.
but still, I liked this when it came out as a single, and I always loved the film clip of the World War One uh, Englishman and German meeting in the
Yeah.
trenches for that sort of Christmas truce, playing
Yeah.
football and all that sort of thing. It's a great clip, probably one of Paul McCartney's best clips, actually, I think. But
Yeah, I think so too. And I want to say this about I don't get many chances to say this. I mentioned this briefly on another show, but I think that you talked about Ebony and Ivory and Pipes of Peace being a slightly better lyric, and I agree. But one of the things about Ebony and Ivory is that it would have aged better if it wasn't the single. If it
mm,
wasn't so huge, I think if it was just the last song on Tug of War, it would have fared differently. I think it would have been more people would have said, "Oh, that's a nice sentiment," which I think is the point that he's trying to put out. But when there was so much fuss about it, and I mean, I remember buying Ebony and Ivory before. I think I bought it before Tug of War came out. Somebody can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, at least in the US. And it had its own album cover. I mean, it came out as a 12-inch, and it was just the single on a 12-inch record, and so there was a lot of attention paid towards it. So.
Yeah.
And you people may be wondering why I'm talking about that when I'm talking about Pipes of Peace, but that was a big part of how critics turned on Paul McCartney, and more on that later.
Yeah. But I agree with the Ebony and Ivory comments because when I did my Paul McCartney top 10, Tug of War was my number 2 Paul McCartney album, my second favorite. It might have been number 1 if it wasn't for Ebony and Ivory.
Yeah,
That
well,
one's,
yeah, but I was gonna say is both Tug of War and Pipes of Peace for me, I wouldn't call either one, I wouldn't rate either one a 10. Spoiler alert. Because I think that both of them are flawed, and mostly in a sequencing kind of a way, but we'll get to that.
yeah. So then we get Say, Say, Say. This was the lead-off single. This did come out just before the album. It was released on the 3rd of October, 1983. So it was about like 3-4 weeks before the album came out. Obviously, big hit single, collaboration with Michael Jackson. What are your thoughts on this one?
I think that, it's very easy for somebody who doesn't like this album. I'm not necessarily talking about you, but the average Joe who doesn't like this album, to point to Say, Say, Say as a something that's kind of cheesy that doesn't meet the high standards of Paul McCartney. I don't think so. I don't think that this song is very different from it is different from Take It Away, but it is a Paul McCartney song produced by George Martin with an elaborate horn arrangement. And so for that reason, they sort of are like each other. I don't think Say 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 suffers from having Michael Jackson on it. And let's face it, we're going to have to talk about this. There are people who don't like Michael Jackson for many reasons, and there are people
Hmm.
who don't like Michael Jackson for socio-political reasons, and I totally get that. But I don't think it's fair to be too hard on Paul McCartney for the fact that uh, uh, Michael Jackson is on 2 of these songs. I don't think that his performances bring down this album at all, and I think Say 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 could have been done without him. So
Yeah.
I think that the arrangement is strong enough that it could have been done without him. I don't
Yeah.
know if you remember this. I wish I had it. But the one of the things that was always fun of Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson, and they're sort of full body and they're kind of cut out and sort of put on like a background. This is I'm just remembering this off the top of my head, but it's
Yeah.
a really silly looking 45 cover.
Yeah,
And I
it
remember
is.
working in the record store and people giving McCartney a lot of grief for not only the song, but the picture that was on the 45 and the 12-inch. So again, that's unfortunate, but I don't really think there's anything wrong with Say Say Say. I think
No,
it's pretty strong.
look, I agree with you. This is actually one of my favorite songs on the album. I loved it when it first came out. Even just listening to it an hour ago, I still
Yeah,
really enjoyed it when it came on.
great
I
sounding too.
yeah,
Fantastic production.
it's a really strong collaboration. You say Paul McCartney could have done this without Michael Jackson, except for the fact that Michael Jackson co-wrote this song, so there
Yes,
wouldn't be a Say
yes.
Say Say
That may
without
not
Michael
have been a
Jackson.
fair thing to say.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it was a big hit single, and
Number
I
one in the
think,
States, stayed there
yeah,
for 7 weeks, something like that. Wait, let me get this right. Uh, 6 weeks.
yeah. Well, this was right at the height of Michael Jackson mania, wasn't it? Thriller and all that
Yeah.
sort of thing. So anything Michael Jackson did then was going to go huge on the charts. But I
This
think
was
it
this
deserved to.
album when this album came out. I was when I was working in a record store, and I've told this story a couple of times, but this was one, but back in the day when this record came out, I remember a reviewer talking about the fact that McCartney records at this time were what they considered to be event albums. Like record buyers knew the day that it was going to come out and they showed up on that day to
Yeah.
get it. There are lots of albums by lots of people that are like that. You could probably say the Police were like that, like when Synchronicity came out, people
Mm.
were waiting for it. But I remember opening the box that it came in and people forming a line behind me and me having to hand it to them before I could even put a price sticker on it. So that's the last time that happened to Paul McCartney, probably.
Yeah.
But I do have that memory of probably a big part of it was because of Say 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 and Michael Jackson and that song being number one. But
Yeah.
there were people in line waiting to take it out of my hands.
Yeah.
So
But after those sort of two singles, Pipes of Peace, Say, 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 Wham, Wham, then we get The Other Me. And we're getting into sort of more the deep album cuts at this point. So I'll be interested to see what you think of The Other Me.
I like The Other Me. I think that it shines as kind of a lighter song with kind of a light, kind of bouncy arrangement. I think that that is kind of what this album is all about, is clever arrangements and the songs being sort of a I don't want to use light as a insult. I mean it as a compliment. They're kind of like these little pieces that sort of let you see McCartney's personality. And there are a lot of people complain about the lyrics on this album, but I feel like there are times on this album where you almost can hear McCartney's speaking voice because the lyrics are kind of charming. But I mean, they could be considered lightweight, if you don't, if you're not a fan of the album. But I think The Other Me is there are better songs than The Other Me, and we'll get to that. But I like that song. I think it's a nice bridge between Say 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 and Keep Under Cover, which I think is spectacular, which we're going to
Yeah.
talk about in a minute.
Well, look, this song really does not do it for me, I've got to say. This is one of the ones he recorded specially for this album too. And to me, this really is, I don't mind light-hearted Paul McCartney. I don't mind sort of, when he gets a little airy musically and that sort of
Yeah.
thing. But this song to me is just really, and I'm going to use this as a pejorative, lightweight. It, there really isn't a lot to this song. It's got the most basic drum machine pattern on it. Uh, the lyric too. I have to point out this lyric, the first verse. I know I was a crazy fool for treating you the way I did,
I know
but
where you're going
something
with
took a
this.
hold of me and I acted like a dustbin lid.
I think that the criticism of that I particularly think is overstated. Do I like that line? No.
I think it's
No.
awful. I think it's
But
terrible.
I don't think it's that bad. But yeah, and you can also say that the background vocals nah 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 nah
Yeah,
nah. I mean, I'm not crazy about that either.
it's not even that for me. It's like he does these little sort of, sort of these gasping little vocal things, and almost like he's
Yeah,
trying to
you
be
know who
Michael
liked to do
Jackson,
that? Michael Jackson. Yeah.
but he can't pull it off, or he doesn't pull it off anyway. Nah, this song's to me this not a good song at all. I really, really don't like The Other Me at all. But keep it undercover. I'll be interested. You were sort of alluding to this song coming up next.
Yes. I think Keep Undercover is a McCartney masterpiece. First of all, Stanley Clarke. The bass line from Stanley Clarke is absolutely amazing. And the song is just so clever. The vocal arrangement is so great. The arrangement of the whole song is so great. Uh, I it's tight. The ending I think is fantastic. There's something about the rhythmic quality of the song. It's very well played. And let me see here. Let me look at the credits. I believe, let's see, track 4. Yeah, Paul McCartney's playing the drums, and he's playing the drums with the rhythm section is Paul McCartney and Stanley Clark
Mm.
on the bass, and the way that that comes out, I think, is really just remarkably good. I think this song is way underrated, and you know, I let me let me look at this really quick before I say this. I think this song is better than a lot of the songs on Tug of War.
Yeah.
I think the song is that good.
I don't know if I would go that far, but I will say this. Best song on the album for me.
I'll take that.
I really like this song. This is an outtake from Tug of War. It could have fit easily on Tug of War.
Yeah,
Would have been well at home. The strings on this are so good. Those really staccato,
yeah,
that dit, 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 dit,
yeah.
dit. Love that. Probably my favorite George Martin arrangement on this album, those strings.
Yeah, one of the best, sure. Yeah.
Um, so I'm not going to go too much more into this song because, as I say, it's my favorite song on the album. Love it to death. Then we get So Bad, which was this was the B-side of Pipes of Peace in most of the world, but it was promoted to the A-side in North America, and
Right.
Pipes of Peace was the B-side. So, you'd be more familiar with this one, it being the single, the second
Right.
single over there. So I'll
Right.
be interested to see your thoughts on this one.
Well, as far as McCartney ballads go, I have a lot to say about McCartney ballads and what should have been his freedom to make them. Uh, Paul McCartney was bullied by the music press and critics into not doing ballads anymore, which is, I mean, really, quite honestly, that's really what happened. And So Bad is not one of my favorites because it's sung in falsetto and it's so light. I like the bigger ones. I like Through Our Love, which we get to later in this album. I like uh, Only Love Remains from Press. I like the big ones, No More Lonely Nights. So Bad seems to me to be kind of a lightweight song amongst his ballads. Drums by Ringo Starr. I think that's really good. But let me read you some critical let me highlight some critical reactions to this song. Um, Stephen Thomas Erlewine, who I don't care for at all, says that Paul gets a little sticky on the song, but the melody saves him. I think that's a sensible comment. Uh, this guy Rob Sheffield, who he says that the music is incredibly beautiful, but the lyrics are barely a first draft. Sheffield goes on to call it an index of things Paul does better than anyone ever. Brighter melodies, sing lovesick high notes, and bat his eyes, but also the things that he doesn't do well. Make decisions about production, choose his supporting cast, and finish the damn song. Okay, I don't even know what to say to that. Those are three of McCartney's strengths. Make
Mm,
decisions about production, choose his supporting cast, and finish the damn song. I don't know. I think that Paul McCartney's songs sound more unfinished the more he reacts to critics and the more he tries to strip down his sound and make it more raw, which is a common thing that people used to ask him to do back then, like McCartney's Beatles songs, other than the songs on the White Album were ever raw. They weren't.
mm.
They were fully realized orchestrated things. And people used to call them parlor music. So I don't know why he got so much pressure to become less sappy and less orchestrated and more raw. That makes me think that these are people that don't haven't listened to Paul McCartney since McCartney or Ram.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they were after, Five Wings albums. I don't know why they were pressuring McCartney to be stop writing so many ballads and be more rock and roll, meat and
And
potatoes.
and
That's
here's
ridiculous to me.
Yeah, and here's the really ironic thing about that is when McCartney came out in 1970, he got lambasted in the press for like putting out these half done,
Yeah,
unfinished, so he couldn't win either way.
yeah. But
You
Rob
know,
Sheffield thinks that So Bad sounds like it's not finished.
mm,
I, I don't even know what to make of that. Rolling Stone critic Park Peterbaugh calls So Bad a big ballad in the Grand McCartney's tradition, but says it leaves virtually no impression at all. I
Yeah.
think that's pretty harsh.
Well,
So
look,
people didn't like So Bad. So Bad is one of the stepping stones to what people perceived to be McCartney's turn into mediocrity, which I disagree with.
yeah,
So Bad tends to be a punching bag.
yeah, look, Paul often gets accused of being sappy with his ballads, and I think unfairly, as you do. However, personally, I think the critics are spot on with this one. Not so much about it being unfinished and that sort of thing, but
Right?
this song to me is pretty sappy. There's some
Yeah.
great bass playing on it though. That
Mhm.
in that sort of middle eight section, there's that
Yeah.
beautiful lick that Paul plays with boom boom
Yes.
boom. I love that to death. And it's always nice to have Ringo on drums, but to
Yes.
me, that's pretty much all the song has going for it.
I wanted
I,
to mention one more comment that Mr. Sheffield says. He says that the video for So Bad, which is them mimicking playing their instruments and interspersed with photos taken by Linda. It's not a great video, but he says the video makes him feel like Paul went out of his way to flaunt how little he cared. That's just taking shots at this
yes, it
point.
is. Absolutely. Look,
Okay, I'm off my soapbox
it's it's not a
for
great
now.
video, but it's not the worst video I've ever seen either.
No,
You know,
no, and
it's
that's
a pretty
business too.
standard performance video for the 80s.
That's something that's on your to-do list that you check off. We need a video. Here's the video. Okay, next.
Yeah. And also, I mean, this song wasn't meant to be the single, it was
Right.
only released in the US and I think Canada.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, he probably threw that together in a day, so
Yeah, yeah,
whereas, Say and Pipes of Peace, they were big productions, those videos, and they're
yeah.
really good videos. But look, that's side one. Side one, I think, I still don't think it's as good as Tug of War, but I don't think it's awful. I don't think any
Side
Paul
one of Tug of
McCartney's,
War is incredibly strong. It really is. I mean,
yeah.
it's a hard act to follow. My issue with Tug of War is side two, but
Yeah, well, I think you'll find
topic for
my
another
issue with
show.
Pipes of Pieces side too. So let's get into that. And we get The Man first, which is the other collaboration with Michael Jackson. This wasn't released as a single, except I do believe there was a promo single of it released in Spain.
Hmm.
So yeah, and it was just like a one-sided single. There was nothing on the B side. So,
Okay, that's
but
interesting. I didn't know that.
yeah. So what are your thoughts on The Man?
Okay, I have a lot of thoughts on the man. Okay, first off, I want to mention that probably one of the best videos that has been done on the topic of this album is something that our friend Tom Curlis did on his show Curlis Mania a couple of months ago, and it was him and another person, and the two of them were trying. It was an album battle show, and they were trying to figure out what was better, Tug of War and Pipes of Peace. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe they both chose Pipes of Peace. But they said it was very, very close. But even on that show, where you've got two people who really love both of these albums, they both said they didn't like The Man. I have always loved The Man, and I think that it is obviously an attempt to sound like a mid to late 60s uh, easy listening pop record. I think that much I thought about this afternoon, like the Supertramp song "Mine Kind of Lady." You know how that's supposed to sound like a obviously it's supposed to sound like a 50s doo-wop song. The video
Hmm.
even shows that. But I think that the man obviously is supposed to sound like a late 60s pop song. an easy listening pop song. And the arrangement, I think, is brilliant. If you put your brain in that box and you say, okay, this is what this is. This is supposed to sound nostalgic. It came out in 1983. It's supposed to sound 15 to 20 years old. Uh, I think that's what the man is. And I think that there are people that think the man is cheesy. And I can totally see how you would think that, but I think it's supposed to be nostalgic. Uh, that's my hot take on the man. What do you think?
Yeah. Look, I'm probably not in either camp. I think this is definitely the weaker of the two collabs with Michael Jackson. The stinging guitar at the beginning and in the middle is really cool. I believe that's
Yes.
Eric Stewart. It sounds
Yeah,
like Eric
that's my best
Stewart.
guess. Yeah.
It's very
Yeah.
got a very 10cc kind of sound to the
It
guitar
does.
tone, you know.
Yeah, it's a great tone. Yeah.
Um, the song itself is okay, but it's not for me, it's not the best work by either Paul McCartney or Michael Jackson. Um, and I don't think it's George Martin's greatest string arrangement either. It's a little rote to me, the string
I
arrangement.
think there's one better on this album, but a couple better on this album. But I do think that it accomplishes what it's trying to do. And I mean, there's even parts in it where McCartney and Michael Jackson sing in unison, which makes it sound nostalgic.
Mm,
And there are even parts where it's a little bit hard to tell who you're listening to because they almost sing it kind of similar. Uh, I think the man is slightly stronger than Say, and
yeah,
I understand that that is a uh, a controversial opinion,
yeah.
contrarian if you will.
No, that's fair enough. As I say, I don't think the man is sappy or anything like that. I just think it's a little. I think undistinguished is the word I would use. Um,
Certainly not what people expected.
mm,
That when they bought the album and they said, "Oh, great, there's two collaborations with Michael Jackson, and I haven't heard the other one yet." There were probably a lot of people who were disappointed
yeah.
when they heard the other one, but not me.
And then we get Sweetest Little Show, which is
Okay.
another one of the songs that were recorded during the tug of war sessions. What are your thoughts on this one?
I actually think that Sweetest Little Show is kind of in the same vein as the other me. I think it's a little bit better. I think that it's another example of where they took those Paul and Linda layered background vocals and really turned them up loud. And the way that that background vocal part segues into Average Person, which I think is another really exceptional song, is really cool. I think that Sweetest Little Show is completely non-offensive.
Mm,
And if you're not trying to turn Paul McCartney into this heavy rock and roller, which I never understood why anybody tried to turn him into that. Um, again, melodically, very satisfying and almost kind of a bridge between the man and average person.
yeah. I
Not
think
not a not a super strong track.
I don't, I actually think this is a pretty good song, but I
Mhm.
can see why they left it off Tug of War because to me it's got a fair bit of sort of similarity to Get It, his collaboration with Carl
Yeah,
Perkins on Tug of War.
yeah,
And I think
yeah.
Get It
I
is
would
a
have
better
preferred
song.
it to get it. I think it's better. I think it's a better song.
Okay.
But
Well,
I can see that comparison. Yes.
I think Get It's the better song, and I like, the fact that it's a collaboration with Carl Perkins and that sort of thing. But I don't hate this song. I actually quite like Sweetest Little Show. I think it's one of those charming Paul McCartney songs that I really like. And yeah, I always love it when Linda is prominent in the background vocals because I
She's a
love
secret
her.
weapon.
Yeah, absolutely.
When she wasn't there anymore, something was missing.
But then we get to Average Person, and I feel like you've got thoughts about this song.
I do. I don't have a lot to say about Average Person. Some of the things I would say about it are similar to the things I would say about Keep Undercover. Super clever. I don't know what your take on the lyrics are going to be. I think that most people consider this to be another example of the lyrics being weak. Um, I don't really think so. I don't remember what there's one lyric where I alluded to this earlier where I'm gonna have to read this because I don't remember it. Um, well, I bumped into a man who'd been a boxer, and you can hear Paul's speaking voice when
Mm,
he says that line. And I think
yes.
this song is kind of a lot like that. Like you can hear uh, like McCartney's like telling a story. I don't think that there's anything really profound in the lyrics, which is interesting because it there could have been, doing a song called Average Person, it could have been socio-political and it could have talked about something weighty, but it doesn't. So in that way, it's kind of a fail, I guess. But Ringo Starr drums, great arrangement. I like it. I think it is number two behind Keep Undercover, but still very close to it. I like
Yeah.
it a lot.
Um, I can also see why they left this one off Tug of War because this was also recorded during the Tug of War sessions. I don't think this is a great song, though. To me, it's in the vein of a song like Ballroom Dancing,
Yeah, yeah.
but I think Ballroom Dancing again is a far superior song. Um, to me, the lyric doesn't work. I can see what he's going for in the lyric. I don't think it's a bad lyric, but I just don't think it lands. It
Mhm.
he's obviously going for these little vignettes of like these average people and their little
Yeah.
sort of travails during their sort of life and that sort of thing, but I just don't think he quite nails it. I don't think it's a terrible lyric, but I just don't think he quite gets what he's going for here. And I also think this song is too long. It's 4.5 minutes long. I think it outstays its welcome by about a minute. I think he could have cut a verse off this and it would have made it a better song.
As much as I like the song, I think I agree with that. Yeah, I think I agree with that.
But
About a minute.
yeah. So then we get Hey Hey, which is an instrumental, mostly instrumental. There's a few sort of wordless vocals in it. And this is written by Paul McCartney and Stanley Clarke.
And
So
that's
it's
Stanley Clark doing the vocals, I believe.
yeah,
So, yeah, this is to me, tracks 9 and 10 is where is the weakest part of the album. I like the fact that there are songs on it that aren't really necessarily fully uh, realized songs that are just kind of bridges, kind of like where Paul McCartney calls "Be What You See" a link. It's like it's kind of like that. That's the one that has the subtitle. It doesn't say that on here. That's the one that on the CD is called "Be What You See" link. Is that right? Do I have that right? I think
yes,
that's right.
yeah. No, it is on
But
the original vinyl too. I remember that.
yeah,
Not on the back
on the
cover, but on
US
the lyric
vinyl,
sheet.
it
Yeah.
doesn't say that, but I couldn't remember whether that was the right song. But I like that those are in there. But what I don't like is that Hey Hey and Tug of Peace, which I think both qualify as songs that aren't quite songs. I don't like that they're right together.
Mm,
So you've got Average Person, which I think is a really good arrangement and really strong. And then you've got Through Our Love, which we're going to talk about in a minute, which I absolutely adore. But then you've got Hey Hey and Tug of Peace sitting right next to each other. I think if they had separated those and put like one of them on side one, I don't think that they go. And even if they had taken it like McCartney likes to do and called it Hey Hey slash Tug of Peace and put them together as one track, I
mm,
think that would have been preferable to what they did, but I still wouldn't have put them in the second to the last position.
yeah.
I don't like that these two songs are next to each other and are in a prominent spot just before the closer.
Yeah.
I don't like that. It makes the album to me, the last thing I would say about it is that it's uneven until you get there. And
Yeah.
then it's like the brakes go on. And so that's my one criticism of this album, and
Yeah.
I think it's a big flaw, unfortunately.
You know, I would have thought that an instrumental written by Paul McCartney and Stanley Clarke would have
Yep.
something more to it. It's almost not
Yes.
there.
I mean, you get this the album cover and you think, oh my
Mm,
goodness, Stanley Clarke and Steve Gadd, what are they gonna do on this album? I'm sure it's gonna be amazing. And then it's Hey Hey.
yeah.
So
It's just, there just isn't very much going on in this sort of 3 minute track,
yeah,
is there? I mean, even the bass playing's not particularly intricate, you
no,
know?
yeah,
So it, you know, the thing I wrote down on this, pleasant but dull. It's like it just doesn't
yeah,
do anything. It's
yeah,
just kind of it sounds like 3 minutes of the two of them farting about in the studio. And I don't think it
yes.
needed to be on the album. It really didn't. You
No.
know, he could have had an actual song there.
Well, and one of the things we've been talking about how some of these songs were meant to be on Tug of War, and when this album came out, I didn't know that. I didn't have any of that information, and it never
Mm,
sounded to me like it was. He only had half an album, and then he sort of tried to fill in the space. It never sounded like that to me, but there it sounds like that.
and the
It
funny thing
sounds
is,
like I don't have a whole album.
this track wasn't. This was actually a Tug of War leftover.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, well that's interesting.
So he must have really been looking for scraps to get this album together. I don't know.
Yeah.
But then we get Tug of Peace, and I think you've alluded to the fact that this is not your favorite song on the album. So,
It's not. I don't mind it. I like that it links you back to Tug of War, but I kind of feel like Pipes of Peace did that already, so I don't know if that was really necessary. I don't love it. I don't hate it. Like I said, if it had been separated from Hey Hey and dropped somewhere else, it would have been like, oh, it's one of those short little things McCartney does on his albums. And I think I would have thought it was charming. But the fact that it sits next to Hey Hey, it's like you've got two songs that aren't quite done sitting right next to each other in a
mm,
really important place. So,
yeah,
so yeah,
nah. Look, you
not a huge fan, don't hate it.
okay, you may not hate it. I do.
But
I
you
can't
do.
stand this track. I think it's a failed experiment. It sounds like filler. Um, People call this an early mashup, and I think that's giving it way too much credit.
I agree. I think that is giving it way too much credit.
I think it's just again Paul McCartney farting about in the studio. That's what it really sounds like. And it'd been great as a B-side or a bonus track or
Yeah.
something like that. But on the actual album, no, it's filler. He should have had again, he should have had a real actual song here instead of whatever
He
this
should have
is.
because he put these two lightweights in between two really great songs, in my opinion.
Yeah,
And so I think that's a
but
real I think that's a real
but
flaw of the album. And also, Hey Hey and Tug of Peace are both pretty short. They both
yeah.
could have been shorter,
Mm.
I
But I don't.
think.
Yeah, I this is the worst
But then
track
he
on the
would have needed
album.
another song because he's only at 39 minutes
Yeah,
total. So
but no, this is the worst track on the album, and it's if I was doing a top 10 worst Paul McCartney songs, this might be in the running. So
yeah. To me,
it,
Hey Hey and Tug of Peace are tied for worst.
mm, yeah. But then we get the album closer, Through Our Love. And I can already tell from what you've said that you've got a lot of love for this song.
I do. I do love this song, and I think that the string arrangements are exquisite. Again, the string arrangements sound to me like they're nostalgic on purpose. But I think it's really beautiful. I like the way the percussion sounds like when he says, "Whenever you get some time," it almost sounds like an orchestral percussion section. I think that it almost sounds like the orchestra's playing that part. I like that. I think it's very classy and again, kind of easy listening. And a lot of rock and roll people don't like easy listening. So I think that hence is the problem that a lot of
Yeah.
people have with this album. But I think it's beautiful.
Well, as you would know from we did our Chicago in the 80s show, you would know that I do like easy listening. And
Right. Yeah, I wasn't talking about you.
yeah. But to me, this is not one of Macca's best ballads. It's fine. but I think he's done a lot better than this.
I think it's somewhere between uh midway between I wouldn't call it one of his best. I think it's close to that. I think it's
Mm,
at sitting in that like 75%.
yeah.
Like it's not his best, but it's close to it, I
Look, I
think.
will say this: it's a better ballad than So Bad.
It
Um,
is. It is. My high mark for McCartney ballads is Only Love Remains from this
yeah,
album. I think it's beautiful, and I think the song gets lost because there's a lot of McCartney Stewart nonsense on this record, but there's
yeah.
also some good stuff, and that's one of the really good things.
See,
That's a topic for another show,
I
but
was going to say, when I first started planning my channel and I was coming up with initial ideas for in defense of shows,
Mhm.
press to play is on that list because I probably, now I'm going to be controversial here. I probably like press to play better than I like Pipes of Peace.
I actually really respect that opinion because I think that I think there are some things on Press Play that are really clever. And I
Yeah,
think there are some things like Press and Only Love Remains that I think are exceptional.
yeah.
So I did I just don't I don't think that there are a lot of people, and this is going to sound elitist, and I don't mean to, but I don't think that there are a lot of people, especially critics and music scholars, that really understand Paul McCartney as a solo artist.
Mm,
I don't. I think there are too many that really don't.
yeah,
They think
no,
of him as a Beatle, and
I'm inclined to agree with
I
you.
don't think that's right.
Yeah. But look, I'll tell you what, there is one thing I'm going to disagree with you on with Through Our Love, and that is George Martin's arrangements. I don't think it's his best work. I really don't.
Um,
I
I
feel
can
it's a little,
see how somebody would not like it.
I just think it's a
I like
little,
it.
again, same as I was making a similar comment on which song was it? One of his other string arrangements on this album is I feel like it's a little rote.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I think that was
The Man.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's probably for the same reason because you were talking about that song being a throwback song to a sort of
Mhm.
earlier easy listening sort of thing. I don't know, maybe that's what George Martin's going for with that arrangement. And if that is, I can respect that, but it doesn't really appeal to me. I feel like George,
There's
when
yeah,
you
go ahead.
think of George Martin string arrangements and things like he did on Eleanor Rigby and Day in the Life and even on this album on Keep Undercover. Um, you know, I just feel like it's yeah, a little more conventional and maybe not so adventurous. I think that's maybe what I'm trying to say.
There's a string flourish during this song, Through Our Love, that is very it's very Sinatra slash Tony Bennett.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's I think done on purpose,
yeah.
but you know, I grew up with a lot of that in my house so for me it's like comfort food,
Mm,
but I when I hear it, I think, oh, so many people must hate this.
yeah. You say
I'm not one of
Sinatra,
them,
you
but
say Sinatra slash Tony Bennett. The name that came into my head was Nelson Riddle, who did a lot of
yeah,
those arrangements.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah.
So I get it. I get why people don't like it.
So So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That's our thoughts on Pipes of Peace. As you can see, Todd loves this album a lot better than I do. Um, Obviously, this is a top, you nearly included this in your top 10 for like all Beatles and solo albums.
Yeah, I didn't, did I? I just wanted
No,
to talk about how much I liked it, but I didn't actually put it in there.
yeah,
It's probably sitting around number 14 or 15.
yeah. And I just recently saw Sea of Tranquility did a top 10 Paul McCartney out solo albums. Um, and both Pete and I think it was Rick Labonte was his guest
Mhm.
for that one. They both ranked Pipes of Peace very high. So
Yeah, and I
obviously
noticed
this
it a lot in
has
the comments. People ranked it high, and I looked at the comments on purpose, thinking, "Oh, they're going to trash it." And some people did, but most people didn't.
Yeah.
So,
And look, obviously this album has its defenders and its lovers, and that's great. I don't hate this album, but as you can see, I'm not a big fan of this album. It's certainly not a top 10 Paul McCartney album for me. And that's what's great about these shows is that we can discuss this. We can have some disagreements about them, but they're friendly arguments. So,
right.
even when I say something's rubbish and that sort of thing, you know, I still, I've listened to this album a few times in the last few days, and it's still a good listen. It's just, I think there's a lot of Paul McCartney albums that are better than this one. So,
Well, I kind of feel like this era, which starting here and then going here, and then this is going to be controversial, going here and then going here. I think that that is my favorite McCartney era
yeah,
because I feel like he was doing what he wanted to do and acting like a kind of like a prestige artist in a way. Like he was signed to Columbia. He was sort of acting like he was a Columbia prestige artist. He was
yeah,
doing trying different genres and trying to do things that were more sophisticated than what he was usually doing. And so for me, even though probably every single one of those albums I think is flawed, it's also my favorite period of his creativity. I think after Press to Play, when he starts listening to critics and he makes the Russian album and he makes Flowers in the Dirt, which I think is still good, but I think you could really feel like he was going, okay, this is going to be organic. I'm not going to fall into the same traps that I get lambasted for. I'm going to try something, and I'm going to make sure all the productions, and none of the arrangements are over the top. It just feels safe to me, and that's how I
yeah,
feel about Flaming Pie too. It just feels safe. I don't think these albums sound safe.
yeah.
I think
No,
it
fair enough.
sounds like I think it sounds like a 45 to 50-year-old guy making what he thinks is appropriate music.
Yeah,
So for that, I like him for it.
yeah,
I respect him for that.
yeah,
And I think that what happened to him after this and in the 90s, I think flashes of brilliance, but also disappointing in comparison.
yeah,
And that most people don't think that, but I
yeah.
do.
Well, there you have it, everyone. Please let us know in the comments what you think of Pipes of Peace, whether you agree with Todd, whether you agree with me, whether you're somewhere in the middle. Love to hear from you. Todd, thank you so much for doing the show. It's always a pleasure having you on the channel, and I can't
Oh,
wait
thank you
to
so
have you
much
on
for having
again.
me. Thanks.
Um,
Absolutely.
Please do like, share, and subscribe. It really does help the channel out. If you're new to the channel, please go and have a look at some of my other videos. I have everything playlisted, so if you want to see some of my other friendly argument shows, I have a playlist for those. If you want to see some of my panels, which Todd's appeared on a bunch of my panels, I have a playlist for those. And if you want to see my appearances on other people's channels, like The Contrarians, where Todd and I both hang out from time to time, I also have a playlist for those. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm at bicyclelegs on Instagram, Twitter, and a bunch of other places. I also have a dedicated Bicycle Legs Facebook page. Links are all in the doobly-doo. Please do give those all a follow and join in the conversation. I'd really love to have you there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.